Hello and welcome back to the Care Plan. My name is Jacqueline Boyd. I'm the owner and founder, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today. As you are probably well aware if you've watched this channel, aging presents no shortage of challenges, and perhaps one of the greatest is the transition from being a caregiver to being a care recipient. We don't think of it in these terms, but if you're caring for an aging loved one, that's what's happened to them. They've spent perhaps 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years caring for their friends and family, and now are on the receiving end. It's not an easy transition, and it may be difficult for them to tell you what their needs are or to accept that they are going to need help in the future. And while you can't force someone to talk about care planning, you can give yourself the gift of a contingency plan. At the Care Plan, we have developed contingency plans as a way to equip our clients who can't seem to get through to their loved one. I'll share an example. One daughter who recently came to us was really at the end of her rope. Her father had had a stroke a few years prior, and he had just continually made decisions that affected his health in a negative way. He was continually behaving in a way that put himself and others at risk. Anytime she brought up questions like, well, what are you going to do when you can't take care of yourself? He would completely shut down and told her it was none of her business. If this sounds familiar, then you probably are a candidate for creating a contingency plan. During our initial conversation with this daughter, she broke down in tears a number of times because of how personally she was affected and how scared she was for her dad's health. But by the end of the conversation, we had a plan that helped her feel like she was in control, regardless of what his decisions were, and that when the time came, she would have all the information, resources, and providers at her fingertips to solve any problem that came up. Contingency planning is essentially about anticipation, assumption, and organization. If you are able to build a very basic plan that incorporates those three concepts, then you're in good shape for the future. Let's start by talking about anticipation. Anticipation is about identifying the likely paths ahead. No one knows the future. It's important to understand your loved one's care landscape and ask the question, what will I need? When you're thinking about the anticipation stage, try to think about what is their medical profile, what are their financial assets, and is their current living situation sustainable? Who else could help or be a part of the support team? We have a number of other videos on these topics, especially around how to build a care team and how to plan ahead that you should take a look at as well. So the anticipation phase is let's figure out what the future needs are going to be. Assumption takes a slightly different tactic. If your loved one will not share their thoughts or their preferences, there are some important dots that you have to connect. To do this, you need to step outside of yourself to clearly see who this person is. Even though they may not tell you outright what decisions they would make, take into consideration what you know of them. How have they responded when other people have been sick? Have there been points in time where they were caretakers and where they said things like, oh, I would never want that done for me, or I really like the way that they handled that? Review again the little hints that they've shared along the way to get a sense for what decisions can be made if they refuse to tell you themselves. The other piece to remember is identity doesn't go away as we age. You don't just become a sick person. Who they've been their whole lives is who they still want to be treated like, regardless of what they can or cannot do for themselves. So make sure to try and prioritize identity when you're doing your contingency planning. The third step is organization. We cannot stress it enough. Document, document, document. If you're able to put onto paper the people who are involved in your loved one's care, the attorneys, real estate brokers, surgeons, primary care physicians, pharmacy, all of that important information that you will likely not remember at the moment of crisis, it's going to help you feel more in control. So make sure that you have all of that written down someplace. You can use an app, you can use Google, you can use a notebook, but just make sure that you have those details at your fingertips so when the time comes, you have it already organized. The other piece of organization and anticipation and assumption is, okay, if I know that my parents are likely to need caregivers in the future, why don't you go ahead and do that research ahead of time? Identify the top 3 agencies that you think are trustworthy and would do a good job. If you think they're going to need to go into a rehab facility or long-term skilled care, do that work ahead of time. Take a look at our other video on how to find a nursing home and see if you can identify the top 3 choices so that you have options. So again, if you're thinking about making a contingency plan, please don't hesitate. It's never too soon, and you can always give us a call. This is our area of specialty. So if you want to plan ahead for yourself or a loved one and create a contingency plan, we encourage you to get in touch today. Thank you so much for watching, and take good care.